Welcome, everyone. Today, I got a special guest with me here at Valor Legacy Wealth Podcast /YouTube /Instagram or wherever you're going to find us today. Louie Hillman with Optimus Producer Partners. Welcome.
Or live right here in your conference room.
That's true.
Your beautiful office.
Where we've had lots of client meetings.
Yes, so, we've made some magic happen in this office.
Yes, we have. But you are officially here live in the flesh, not on the drop-in from the Teams meet. So...
Just as handsome in real life.
That's fact.
As I am on the TV.
That's true. That's true.
As
an aside, most people don't know this, but Mr. Hillman here actually has some broadcast history behind him. Why don't you share that real quick? Just a little fun fact.
Spent almost a decade behind the camera as a television news reporter and then on the anchor desk.
Nice.
Now,
did you ever do the weather?
I never had to be called in to do the weather.
That's good.
I did have to come in and do the news and the sports segments and double dip, but never the weather segments.
Yeah, because weather in Green Bay is basically it's going to snow. And the Packers are still great.
Yeah. And if you get it right, everybody expects you to get it right. If you get it wrong, then they're mad at you. So I was never interested in doing the weather.
Sounds good. Well, we have graduated to bigger and better things than the weather in Green Bay now. But I want to talk to you today about something I think it's very important for lots of clients and the wealth accumulation and that they've built is how to protect your wealth from an unforeseen care event. So let's talk a little bit about what you at Lifebridge have brought into my practice, and that's Lifebridge LTC.
Well, it's something we've, as financial planners, we've known the whole time it's a big risk, right? But we're thinking about all of the risks in retirement, sequence of return risk, right?
Yep.
Retiring and then the market goes into a bear market, or like the lost decade of 2000 to 2010.
Mm-hmm.
We think about tax risk. We think about long-term care risk. You kind of are evaluating and thinking about all of the things that could derail a retirement plan. Up until last year, we had really never put a microscope on long-term care and how financially devastating it could be. But when you really understand all of these different risks retirees face, I will tell you it is the number one risk in retirement and nothing is even close.
I mean, I have to agree with you. I mean, I think it's that risk that nobody wants to talk about and or think about. We were having this conversation in my office a few hours ago. I made the statement that it's not going to happen to me mentality. And I think that's why people are very reluctant to even talk about it and look at it. Because in a sense, you have to confront your own mortality in that, and we're all 10 foot tall and bulletproof. And so having that conversation, I think, is hard. So I think it's good for people to recognize that being responsible with how you've built your wealth, it's equally as prudent and responsible to address your mortality.
Well, and I would pick on us as men because not all families, but many families, men are the financial decision makers, and men are even more stubborn about this topic than their wives are, because they are saying things like, it won't happen to me. Or I've been in meetings where the husband has said, yeah, if I get sick, you know where the gun is, you know how to finish it.
Yeah.
Which is not funny, first of all, but it's also not helpful if you're not going to take the time to really sit down and think about what the risk is, because it's not a long-term care risk. It's a retirement and income and legacy risk, because people are going to need care. They're going to need care for an increasingly long time, which we can talk about in a minute. And it is the number one thing that can ruin a portfolio.
Yeah.
So I really am asking the men in relationships to man up and be willing to sit down and talk about this topic and not pretend like it won't happen to them, because it will. And it's funny because so often the wives are kind of kicking the husband under the table saying, I told you we need to get in and talk to somebody about this topic. So the women are open to this conversation, but usually their husbands are being stubborn and they're kind of the gatekeepers to starting the conversation, which ultimately unfolds the planning.
Yeah. And I would also add to the husband, you have an obligation as a husband to not put your spouse in the position of being emotionally traumatized and their life gets upended being the caretaker for you with no plan. And I think that as a husband, if you are one of those husbands, you need to really be prudent and responsible and take your marriage seriously, and have that conversation with a planner, to protect you and your wife. And, you and I both carry life insurance for the, God forbid, the situation that, we predecease, our children, too early, I guess is probably the way you would look at it. But also, like, as a planning, like, the last thing I'd want to do to my wife is put her in a position where she has to care for me with no assets, she has to spend down assets she's not prepared to spend down. Where do we go? What are we spending down first? She's a very smart woman, but that's probably not the first thing thinking in the forefront of her mind in an unplanned care event.
Yeah. So you can pretend it's not going to happen and pack it in a corner and hope and pray, or you can do the responsible thing and take steps to make sure it doesn't not only become a physical and emotional burden on your family, but a financial burden.
Yeah, agreed. And again, not to blow up the years of planning, right? You spent all those years agonizing, saving, stressing, bear markets, accumulating your wealth, right? I talk about my workshops all the time. You've gone up the financial mountain. Well, now we got to go down. And so we got to put some safety, gear on as we're descending the mountain.
Way more people died going down Everest than going up Mount Everest. Absolutely.
That's correct. So, it's an important conversation. And I think it's, as you have an aging demographic, and I think we've talked about this at some point, as more people require care, the institutions providing that care get to be more discerning about who they're going to provide it to.
Well, so a couple things on this topic. There's already a shortage, right? So there's already a shortage of facilities and caregivers. And we're just at the beginning of this silver tsunami, which is people turning 80.
Yep.
Right. So we have this huge aging population where there's already a pinch on high quality services.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you factor in more people are going to need services, what that's going to do, there's already a natural inflationary impact on the cost of care. But as more people are needing it, it will accelerate the inflation, which increases the cost of care and the pressure on the portfolio. And then, we'll talk about this in a minute, but most people are paying for care from their retirement savings, which is IRAs, 457 plans, tax qualified retirement plans that if the bill, James, is $250,000 a year and you have to get through taxes to pay that bill, you might be taking out $300,000 or $325,000 as a distribution from your retirement plan. It only takes a few years of needing care for the whole plan to be completely blown up.
Absolutely. That's just there's not anything left there. There's no sustainable retirement plan after an event like that if you're having such large withdrawals on the plan.
No, it's the fast track to a Medicaid bed. And that's the reality is for families that don't do planning, they will lose control of where and how they receive their care, which I had somebody say to me, well, if my client has advanced dementia, do they really care that they ended up in a Medicaid bed? And I'm saying, well, that's not how I want to think about my loved ones.
Yeah.
Right. That's absolutely the people that have mom and dad that have been there when we were babies to take care of us. We're going to send them off to a Medicaid facility because we chose not to do planning.
And I've been in Medicaid facilities. I don't wish that upon anybody because, that's not the type of level of care that you've probably been accustomed to if you have accumulated the level of wealth that you have some assets in the bank, right? You're not trying to be in Medicaid, and the states are there for you. They're happily going to put you in a Medicaid facility and they're going to put you through spend down to get you there.
Yeah.
So they're happy to do that for you, but they're going to leave you with no money left.
Yeah.
So,
well, and it is one of the misconceptions when it comes to long-term care planning is there was a time where it was home care or nursing home.
Mm-hmm.
And there was really not these intermediary services that there's been so much advancement and development in providing more flexible, progressive care because care oftentimes is not a cliff. It's a slow decline.
Yeah.
Where, okay, now you have plans that are providing home care, but by a licensed professional, so the spouse isn't responsible for the physical, emotional, financial burden of being the one providing the care directly to their spouse.
Correct.
Or then you might transition into like assisted living or a senior communities home where, it's like an apartment with other retirees that it doesn't feel, it's not the feel or even the setting of a nursing home, but you have care readily available and accessible as part of your daily needs.
Yep.
So it just, families need to understand that there's been a lot of development to have more options for what care looks like than what it used to be, which was basically care at home or nursing home, which is such a negative connotation.
Yep.
For most people.
And to that point, I have clients over in the West Valley right now in that example you just described. There, you could live independently. They had a small little cottage style home. Now the wife is in the care facility part of the complex. The husband wakes up, goes over there and has breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and the care part where the wife now lives permanently and, sleeps and spends the rest of his time in his independent living space. So, and they had a buy-in years and years ago for that event, right? But now the buy-in today is probably twice, if not three times what they paid to get in. And that was probably a decade ago now. So to your point about the cost of care going up, it is increasing because it's becoming a scarcer environment where to get into those facilities, which are going to provide the level of care that they were accustomed to as a, pretty wealthy couple that retired, it's going to cost more to be there if you even use the care, right? But just to get into the gates, and there is a gate that you got to get through. You have to get in.
And I feel very strongly that families deserve the opportunity to have that kind of quality of care and end of life lifestyle that you're describing, where a couple that have spent their whole life together can still find a way to be in a relationship and not separated from each other at the end of their life. And it's a moral obligation we have as a society to treat our elders with that level of respect.
I agree with that. And let's pivot for a second. Let's talk about the children who show up on your advisor doorstep who want to know mom and dad didn't have a care policy if a care event happens.
Well, they're usually upset.
They are.
Well, there's a natural friction between generations because at its core, every dollar allocated to pay for care is a dollar that the next generation does not inherit, right?
Yeah.
And even if the next generation is well-intentioned, loving, there's still a friction, whether spoken out loud or subconsciously in the back of their mind, trying to decide what is the right level of care, how much should we be paying for it. Those are dollars that might be used to extend care later. There's all this friction that comes. And for example, I'm in a peer group with 6 other business owners in the Twin Cities where I'm located. And there's 2 of my peers in the group who are both in their mid-50s whose parents have started going through long-term care. And there's one family in particular where the brother who's in my peer group and his sister have delayed putting mom into memory care for probably about 6 months when she needed to be there 6 months ago. And not because he's a bad person, because the cost literally triples the day that they move mom from kind of like an assisted living or senior apartment into full-blown memory care, the monthly bill triples.
Yeah.
And mom has limited resources, and whatever's left over is inheritable for him and his sister. So like they're navigating something that, whether intentionally or unintentionally, pits generations against each other, which is just not a good outcome.
I think that's such an interesting dilemma and it's one of the reasons I brought it up, because the other I've had, not in my practice, but the other is that attorneys get involved and they, the children hire an attorney and say, why were my mom and dad not provided, a long-term care policy, or why was one not in place? For that reason, those assets are getting spent down, and that generation is seeing their inheritance go to care costs, not to their, bank accounts.
Yeah, well, and another way to look at it beyond just the children that are unhappy that at the end of their parents' life, the vast majority of the family wealth disappears to pay for care is think about mom and dad working their whole life, working hard, saving diligently, making prudent investment decisions. And then all that money at the very end of their life goes to pay for very expensive long-term care needs. Like, it's just a depressing outcome, right? Like, that's all that work went for this purpose at the end of your life. And there's just such a better way to address it.
Yep. So one of the institutions that we work with has a great document, a plan for care document. And on the reverse is like a signature of like, I don't want to have a long-term care conversation, or I'm declining, long-term care. And it's one of the things to have of like, if the beneficiaries show up and like mom and dad are in a care event and they're taking the lead as the trustee for that care, and they ask me that question, well, they didn't want to do that. So, and I think that's just a lot in the world we live in, that's some liability protection. So I think it's good for advisors to, push that to their client, force that conversation. If the client doesn't want to do it, you're prudent to bring it up. I think it's prudent to go through the exercise, some of the things that you and Optimus are bringing to the table that we'll be showcasing here in the near future. But if they choose to self-insure, at least there's some documentation around there was a conversation that was had.
Well, there's been a gap for 15 or 20 years in our planning, in the planning scope across the country because of something that happened in our industry. So the original products that came out, traditional long-term care insurance, were mispriced because the insurance companies did not understand or factor in how long and when long-term care events were going to happen. So they started happening earlier than forecasted, and they lasted longer than forecasted. And they continue to last longer and longer. The length of care needs is something that continues to extend, and it's because of advancements in medical technology where doctors can fix our bodies, but they can't fix our minds. So people are living with cognitive impairments like dementia, and it's putting even more pressure on the portfolio risk. So anyways, to go back to what happened is because those products were mispriced, clients started having to make decisions about either paying more for the same benefits or taking a lesser benefit pool. And it caused friction between the advisor and client. So you fracture the trusted advisor client where it's not what the client thought they were buying. And maybe some of the advisors said, rates could go up on this, but most of the time people hear what they want to hear. They thought they were paying for something and the price would be locked in forever. And then every couple of years they get a bill that it's going up 20, 25%. And then that happens again and again. So advisors said, well, I'm not going to sell a product that makes my clients mad at me. So they just basically stopped addressing long-term care because of the frustrations with the main product line that was developed to help offload the risk. So then advisors just kind of moved away from it, and then our industry has moved to an investment assets under management model where advisors are just thinking about gathering assets. They're more focused on that than doing the planning that had always traditionally been cornerstones of a financial planning practice. Was, yes, you do investments, but you also do insurance, life insurance, long-term care, disability insurance. But the long-term care piece has just been like unaddressed, like widely across the industry. So there's a whole swath of people that are retiring or have retired with literally no long-term care plan in place. And it's either because they rejected it, or more often, they were never even presented an option by their financial advisor.
Very fair. Since you kind of talked about some of the pitfalls of previous plans, I think it's a good segue into Lifebridge. And maybe we can talk about how Optimus has bringing solutions that are going to solve that problem back into the conversation.
Well, our primary goal is, number one, to illuminate how big the risk is.
Look at that word, illuminate.
People have to see how financially devastating a long-term care event can be to a retirement plan. And then if both spouses have a long-term care event, how in peril, in jeopardy, their investments in the retirement income plan is because of that unexpected health event. And when you really put pen to paper, you take, okay, it's about $10,000 a month today. Inflation, if we use 4%, which is honestly probably conservative because of the factors I described earlier, where there's just this huge aging population. But if 4% 20 years from now, so a 60, 65-year-old will need care in their early to mid 80s, you're looking at about a $300,000 a year bill. And if they're going to pay from a taxable retirement account, they're literally distributing somewhere between $400,000 and $500,000 to net the cost, the expense of the bill.
Yes.
And again, it only takes a couple years to see how quickly the portfolio depletes because of that. So we're illuminating the problem, number one. And then we're trying to eliminate the friction between the generations. So generation one can feel very confident that the dollars that they allocate to the long-term care solution do not impact what is left over for generation two. Whether mom and dad have 15 years of combined care or they both die peacefully in their sleep, our plan is putting the next generation to inherit more than the sum total of the premiums allocated to the overall solution in a tax-free life insurance benefit. And we're extremely excited about it because if we can empower families to feel really good about no matter what outcome happens, they need care for a long time, they need care for a little bit of time, or they never need care, that it was a good outcome for them and their families. And then the way that we structure the plan is not all of it, but the lion's share of the dollars allocated to the program continue to grow in a tax advantage way. So in a scenario where there's an income emergency, not a health emergency, but an income emergency, and the family needed to tap into it, the money's still there and accessible and potentially tax-free for them to tap into. So
love that. If you've been with us this far into the video, please like and subscribe the page here at Valor. And if you are interested in some of the conversation things or topics that we're having today around long-term care planning, succession planning for your family, if you are retirees looking at your retirement plan and have a gap in long-term care, please contact our firm. We're here to help, and we can get some iterations built out for you to show you how we can address the long-term care solution here at Valor.
Another important topic as it relates to why we've designed Lifebridge LTC in the manner that we have is we've built a plan that provides unlimited benefits. Literally, long-term care you cannot outlive, where most products or solutions would have a finite benefit pool. And it's hard to measure how valuable this is, but if you think about mom or dad starting to have a slide and the family is kind of like, well, hey, James, can you skip one of your appointments this week and get over to mom's house and help her with a couple things? Well, now you're away from your business or whatever your profession is a little bit. As the care starts to decline, it might become more of a physical burden on the adult children to help with the care needs. It becomes definitely an emotional burden being tasked with caregiving for your parents. Even if you want to do it, it has some impact on your mind, your body, how you're feeling. So if you have an unlimited benefit pool, you don't have to delay. The minute mom or dad qualify for the benefits, you get them set up to start receiving them.
Yep.
So families are now not having to delay a decision about when should they start care. It's basically, this is what it takes to qualify. As soon as mom or dad qualify for it, we start the benefits. And there's just an immense value in not having to have any worry or discussion with your family about when is the right time to start care if you know that the benefit pool is unlimited.
And again, I think to that point about the unlimited benefit pool, if we know the financial aspect is buttoned up, right? If we can get that person the care that they need, it could potentially be a situation where they can address some of the issues, ideally if it's, something they can recover from, and they don't have to be in this facility the rest of their life, right? But if they're in front of the professionals who know what the signs to look for and they can maybe catch things sooner, as opposed to, the layperson being the son who doesn't know what to look for, just trying to make sure mom's comfortable, fed, blah, blah, blah. If the professionals in the room see some things that can potentially be averted for, future, that's just as important, as getting them there sooner. All the healthcare professionals talk about all the time. The sooner we can catch things, the better off you're going to be, right? As opposed to catching it too late.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, it's just my unprofessional opinion, but I like to think it's pretty professional. So. Well, Louie, any other things that we should be talking about in the long-term care planning space?
Well, what we've been doing with families is really doing what we think about as a reorganization of their financial affairs, right? So the way that we structure a plan is basically putting together a balance sheet of what they have, what their income needs are in retirement, and strategically reallocating some of those dollars into a long-term care strategy, but not forfeiting the continued growth of those dollars or forfeiting access. It's not just paying a premium like car insurance or homeowners insurance where, hey, here's what I have to pay every month, money out of my bank account. Yep. And if I never use it, I never get anything in return. No, the money's growing in a solution that is liquid and accessible. So the client still sees a retirement component to our plan.
Yes.
That has lifetime long-term care and a tax-free inheritance.
And to that point, I think it's really important to know that just like the homeowners policy we were describing, by car insurance, homeowners insurance, within that plan, if you benefit from doing proper planning and you never used the care event, it wasn't an asset that just, from Wall Street, Fugazi, it just disappears, right? There's actually a transferable benefit to the next generation. And I think that's important to know that, within the planning mechanism of, shoring up, God forbid this happens, it doesn't happen, you lived a healthy life, you were the one of 6 who didn't have a care event, you didn't waste your money because it's going to end up in your beneficiary's hands at some point.
Yeah. Well, and on that point, I've got two comments about that. First of all, is nobody wants to allocate money to something that they get nothing out of, right?
Yeah.
And that was the problem with traditional long-term care products. If you didn't use it, even though you're statistically likely to, it doesn't feel good to write a check for something you may never get any benefits from, you or your family, right? So we've eliminated that. But it speaks to a mindset, and it's going to come across as a negative, but frugality.
Yeah.
Right? Like I grew up in Wisconsin. My mom clipped coupons out of the grocery, out of the newspaper for going to the grocery, right?
Yep.
So like if you could save, if you're going to buy the same things, but you could save a little bit of money by bringing the coupons to the store, you do it. Well, where I grew up in the Midwest, that's how people think. You don't want to over allocate when you don't have to, right?
Correct.
And insurance planning, absolutely. You don't want to over allocate more than you have to. But if you apply that same frugality mindset to families that don't have the right plan in place, what they're going to do is they're going to be frugal incorrectly with when they start care.
Yeah.
Because they're going to delay mom or dad getting the care that they need because, well, we can wait another month. We can wait another month.
Well, it goes back to the peer group guy you were just talking about, right?
Exactly.
Because the tripling effect of what's going to have to come out in cost.
Exactly. And this is going to be a ridiculous analogy, but imagine, James, okay, so now we're adults taking care of our parents. Imagine 40 years ago, our parents are taking care of us, right? Yep. Mom's making us a lunch every day. Well, I gave James a lunch yesterday. He can get by without a lunch today. Maybe somebody will have some leftovers. He'll be able to get a couple crackers or, some fruit snacks from a kid that doesn't eat all his lunch. Of course not. Yeah. Mom made sure we had a lunch every day when we went to school? Do we not owe it to our parents to give them that same kind of respect and care and not be frugal with the care, giving them the care that they need when they deserve it?
It's so funny you bring this up because I have in my mind's eye, right? My wife makes our children lunch every day. And they got that little bento box, like 4 or 5 little boxes. And, Pierce, what do you want for lunch today? Starts with the snacks. I'll have Cheez-Its, I'll have Pringles, and I'll have my chocolate. And I'm like, so what's for the protein part of the lunch? Oh, okay, I'll have half a cheese pie or something, and so, but they're picking their smorgasbord of what's going into their lunchbox, so as a parent, you want to provide everything for your child. So again, it goes to your illustrative point around taking care of your parents and being prudent. As an advisor, I want to provide that for my clients as a fiduciary. But to those who might be watching this, you have parents in that age. It might be good for the family conversation around, the child bringing it to that parent's table for, hey, mom, dad, if your advisor hasn't talked about this, maybe we should go talk to James at Valor because they're thinking about things that I haven't heard your advisor talk about. And it brings the family together for a larger planning conversation because it's, it's 2 certainties in life, death and taxes. So, and how we want, and hopefully, the care event isn't the event that leads you to death, but in some cases it is.
Well, I've always been impressed since we've started working together is you have a thriving investment business. And there's a lot of advisors that once they hit a certain point, they'd be like, you know what, I don't need to do that other stuff anymore because I have a great investment business. I have my advisory fees coming in every month and every quarter. The hard work's over.
Yeah.
Right. And they could I see it so often where they start taking the easy way, which is not having the difficult conversations with their clients because you know what? It's like, well, why? If the client comes to them and says, hey, I need help on this, of course, yeah, let me help you.
Yeah.
But I've always been impressed. You're not somebody that shies away from the difficult conversations, because it would be easier not to approach your clients about things like long-term care or taxes and just meet with them every quarter and do a portfolio review and pat them on the back and shake their hand.
Yep.
But I've always just been impressed that you're willing to put in the hard work because you are in the minority. Most financial advisors, once they hit a certain level of success with their investment business, they really...
Well, sadly, they turn into a lifestyle business. They're just managing the book. And I'm too passionate about, that's the reason that where Valor came from. Like my service to my country as a veteran, I wanted to take that same commitment and dedication into the financial services arena. And, it'll be almost 20 years it'll be 20 years in July I've been doing this. And I'm more passionate today about doing the right stuff than when I first got in. Because when you first get in, you're kind of just, you don't know what to do. You're just, you like the space and it sounds cool and tell people you're a financial advisor and, get a date out of it. And as opposed to, the guy who isn't a financial advisor. But now I'm very passionate about I've accumulated all this knowledge around taxation and care and wealth management and wealth preservation. And my expertise is the unwinding of the nest egg, the retirement income certified professional. So I would be remiss as an individual, but also as a fiduciary to not have those conversations. And I'd rather have a client say, I don't want to do that and don't ever talk to me about taxes again than not have the tax conversation or the long-term care conversation. But I've always been a little bit of a contrarian contrarian advisor in that sense. And I think that clients appreciate that you're looking at it from a different lens and have a little bit of a different conversation and, because you care.
Well, your clients are lucky to have you because what you're doing is the hard way, but it's the right way.
So I appreciate you saying that. So sometimes it's lonely when nobody thanks you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you. There you go.
Well, everyone, we just want to take a moment. Louie, thank you for your time, your expertise. You're my upline and my mentor in this space. And so I look to you and I appreciate you coming down, take some time here in the Valley of the Sun to thaw out from the Twin Cities and share your knowledge with us.
Yeah, I'm basking in the sun. It feels good.
Got to get a second place down here, sir. So, all right. Thank you, everyone. Like and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next episode at Valor here.